Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're here every week, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we welcome back an old friend today.
Yes, we're here every week with Barry Tramel almost. He has been one of our more frequent guests, and always a good, entertaining conversation about sports and whatever else we want to talk about. We got a lot to talk about today.
Yes, we do. Oklahoma and Texas have caused a major disruption in college sports in this part of the country and in this state, and Barry's been on top of it. So we'll get a rundown on all of that, and then all the other things that are going on.
Just thank OU versus NCAA for
that. Yeah, 40 years, it doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't. I don't let it.
We'll be back with more on The Verdict.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Our first day ride was a 96-mile ride. And I looked at that and I thought, my goodness, 96 miles on the first day of a bike ride? And I made it. I rode 104 miles that day. I am Steve Paniawa, a retired classroom teacher, and I am Chickasaw. On a bicycle, I feel that there's a freedom that I don't have anywhere else. I think the freedom is a big part of it, but you challenge yourself. You're competing with yourself. I'm diabetic, and when I found out, it didn't stop me. Sometimes I say to myself, there are millions and millions riding right now, and they're not pulling over. So Steve, you gotta keep going. It's one of those feelings that you get that, aha, I've accomplished something. I never thought I would go this far.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
It's always a pleasure to have Barry Tramel join us again. He always brings a lot of humor and good information as well. One little stat on introducing Barry that I read about him in getting ready for this, he and his twin brother held the record in Norman, Oklahoma for the largest twins ever born at Norman Regional for a long number of years, and it was only recently surpassed. But besides that, he's a sports columnist for the Oklahoman, has been for 30 years or so. Prior to that, he was with the Norman Transcript. I remember reading him in the Norman Transcript and liking the column very much, and it hasn't changed. He's been Sportscaster of the Year at Oklahoma, or Sports Writer of the Year, pardon me, in Oklahoma, more times than we can count. He is on the nominating committee of the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, and generally a good guy and a great guest. Barry, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
You're always welcome.
You know, we don't have to do much preparation for this show. There's so much to talk about, and we got to spend the first at least segment on Oklahoma and Texas and the decision to leave the Big 12 for the S.E.C. When you heard about it, were you as surprised as most people in leadership positions in the state?
I was as stunned as anybody. I didn't see it coming. Things were going so well for the Big 12 and for OU in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. You know, a week before the news broke, Kansas City Star was at the Big 12 Media Days, and they actually interviewed me for a series they were doing on Big 12 and Big 12 history, and I called this the golden age of OU sports because everything's going so great. You know, football's, riding high, and Patty's softball team, and, the women's gymnastics team's going great, and, the basketball's been very strong and looking good with Porter Moser, but we didn't see the storm clouds coming from 2025, the potential television changes that are coming. OU was very concerned about that and got the offer from the S.E.C, which is going to be very lucrative. They made this for money. You can be mad at OU, but you can't say you don't understand it because the money difference is going to be so massive. They just about had to do it.
Mm-hmm. Was this has to be both of us or not or neither of us from OU and Texas to the S.E.C?
Well, I mean, I think probably the S.E.C would have taken either one without the other, but clearly wanted both, and I think they wanted to go together. You know, they're going into parts unknown. This is, you know, OU's been in a conference with Iowa State and Kansas State for over 100 years. They've been with OSU in a conference for over 60 years. They've got familiar faces, alliances, people they can, you know, sort of rely on. Now they're going to the S.E.C. and they're not going to know much of anybody. It's going to be a bold new world, and Texas, ironically enough, is going to be basically an ally and a friend. You wouldn't know it if you're at the Texas State Fair the second Saturday of October, but really they're colleagues now and partners in a lot of ways. So it's beneficial to both that they have each other going into this new endeavor.
I was stunned when A&M and Texas kind of split conference allegiances a few years ago. And there's so many universities in Texas, looking back, I shouldn't have been so surprised. I mean, they don't think independently or aren't tied together nearly as much as we thought, even though I always heard the Texas state legislature was half Aggies and half Longhorns. And, you know, they just hated each other so much they just stopped playing. I mean, that's the ultimate rivalry. But in Oklahoma, it always seemed different. It always seemed like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, because they were by far the two largest football powers with marketable ability, it just seemed logical that they would always be tied together.
Yeah, it did. And we had the wave of realignment a decade ago, and at the time, Burns Hargis was relatively new as the OSU president, but David Boren was well established as the OU president, and Burns and Boren got along so well and were very provocative and very forthcoming about their desire to stay together and, you know, looking out for each other and didn't want to go one without the other. But you know, Burns, as of July 1st, is no longer the OSU president, and Boren's been gone 3 years out of office, and things change, and it was just a matter of, you know, OU needed financial security in its mind, and the S.E.C. offered it. OU says that they inquired about bringing OSU, and the S.E.C. said they really weren't interested, and you can understand the reasons why. It's all about the market, and you know, if you get OU, you know, ESPN and Fox, whoever, any network considers, well, we've got the Oklahoma market, we don't need Oklahoma State. When they've expanded here 4 times with 4 schools in the last 30 years, the SEC's always added 1 school per state. So you can sort of understand, but you know, things change, and they weren't. The truth is, they weren't the brotherhood we thought they were. Yeah. Maybe they were a decade ago, but they're not now. You know, Casey Shrum, the new OSU president, was fairly caustic in some comments about OU and the way they went about it. OU has responded with, you know, with some of their former regents have talked about, hey, you know, we're mostly competitors. We're not colleagues. So the relationship has a new light. We've learned a lot about it. I've learned a lot about it. It's not what I thought. That's probably my fault more than theirs.
Well, what do you make of Texas A&M's response to this?
Well, I mean, Texas A&M is, you know, sort of ends up looking a little bit on the doofus side of things. I mean, this is they really reveled in their status as being in the SEC. The SEC, of course, everyone considers it to be far superior to the Big 12. Frankly, it is. It's more lucrative. It's been better on the football field. Texas A&M has taken advantage of that. Its recruiting has picked up. They're winning. They're coming off an excellent year, their best year maybe since 1939. But they really haven't won a bunch, but they've really prospered financially. marketing-wise, recruiting-wise. They've prospered in the S.E.C., and part of that is they're the only Texas school in the S.E.C. And then, lo and behold, they find out at 11:45 p.m. before the midnight hour, hey, they're about to bring Texas into our conference. They felt betrayed, I think, by their own conference. They were outraged that they were going to have to share the table with Texas again. And, in the end, they had to suck it up. They didn't really have an option. They're going to have to start playing Texas again. The Horns will have to start playing the Aggies. Mick mentioned it a minute ago. It's a different relationship. It's much more, when we think of Bedlam, we're talking about, the OU Fieldhouse or Gallagher-Iba or Boone Pickens Stadium, Owen Field going crazy over athletic competition. The Longhorns and Aggies, they go crazy on Monday morning, at the water cooler, and 2:30 on Wednesday afternoon in the boardrooms. They sort of take it to a different level, and the A&M is not happy that Texas was sort of given the same status that the Aggies have been enjoying.
Because of this time of year, this all seems centered on football because, that's the reason it took place, but it affects every sport. You're talking about over 20 men's and women's sports. What's their reaction? Have you talked to any of the coaches or boosters of these other programs? Did they have an opinion about this?
Well, at OU, everybody's been very positive. Now, there are some that it's going to be a struggle. OU baseball, for instance, has not been great in recent years. The S.E.C. is a juggernaut in baseball. So Sooner baseball is going to have to get with it and going to have to upgrade. If your program's already going along smooth, like softball, the S.E.C. is a fabulous softball conference, but Patty Gasso has the best softball program in America. So the S.E.C. is thrilled to have the Sooners. The Sooners are thrilled to be there. The competition's going to be better. The matchups are going to be great. Same with women's gymnastics. KJ Kindler has built a fabulous program. The S.E.C. is very strong in women's gymnastics, but the Sooners are more than their equal. So basketball is probably a wash. The Big 12 has been really good in recent years, but the S.E.C.'s been really good too. You're trading out Kansas and Kentucky. I do think, though, that like on the basketball, it's not going to be as good. Going to Rupp Arena is great. Going to Allen Fieldhouse is better because, it's right up the road and you've got all that history. It's going to come at a cost for some of these programs, but in general, they're going to be fine.
We're going to get to a break. We're visiting with Barry Tramel about the upheaval of Oklahoma and Texas, leaving the Big 12 for the S.E.C. We'll talk about the repercussions of that and also the Oklahoma City Thunder when we get back.
One of the best kept secrets about the post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is that it can be used at a trade school or a technical school, and it doesn't have to be used at a university or college. These are benefits that the veterans have earned through their service, and they should take advantage of it.
Veterans really need to understand that there are many resources offered by the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. They are there to help you find the right school for you, the school that will help you and your family make great steps into your future.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams ranked number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Barry Tramel is our guest. So what are Oklahoma State's options at this point? How is all this going to shake out?
Well, we don't know. It's alarming. We all think OSU is going to be fine, but until it happens, it's cause for concern because this is not just it's not really a competitive dilemma. It's a financial dilemma. OSU stands to lose as much as $15 million a year out of their budget. if the television contract can't be fortified. $15 million is a lot of money, and sometimes in sports we don't respect such big numbers anymore with salaries and budgets and things, but that's a lot of money. So that's a major concern. The easiest way to financial stability would be to latch on to another Power 5 conference, probably the Pac-12. But there are a lot of hurdles towards that, some of them geographic, some of them athletic, some of them cultural, and some of them academic. I mean, it's not a slam dunk that the Pac-12 will say, oh, come on, OSU, and bring 3 of your friends. It's possible that OSU's best option will be to remain in the Big 12 and try to prop up the Big 12 as much as possible. The Big 12 television contracts will be up in 3 years, and they're going to have to figure out a way to market themselves. If they stay together as a conference, they're going to have to market themselves in new and different ways. There are some options out there, but it's not going to be as easy as, hey, we got OU in Texas. You want Sooners and Longhorns on your network, so sign right here.
Well, OSU's kind of got a loud voice of the schools that remain. I mean, they can kind of push their weight around and perhaps dictate some things.
They're clearly the most marketable, most powerful brand left in the Big 12, no question about it. They're in the best shape. If you're Baylor or Kansas State, you've got to really be concerned. OSU's probably going to be fine. OSU is one of the 10 winningest programs among the major conferences in the last decade. They've established themselves as a consistent winner. They draw excellent television ratings compared to most schools. So they're in very good shape. But it's still a scary time because you just don't know what's going to happen. And here's the problem with the 8 schools in the Big 12. They're all working together. They've all said we're going to be together. We're going to be bonded. We're going to forge ahead. But everybody knows that if the phone rings at any of those schools, they're going to pick up the phone and say yes. So it's a little bit of a den of thieves mentality, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. It's kind of like the first guy in the conspiracy to plead guilty. He gets a better deal than the rest of them. Well, Barry, I understand that if all else stays the same, there's a several-year delay in OU playing in the S.E.C. and Texas playing without a buyout or something. What do you think is going to happen on that?
Well, I mean, counting this season, 21, there's 4 more years. 4 more football seasons of the current Big 12 TV contract, and OU and Texas are contractually obligated to the Big 12 for those years. And if they leave, their television money stays with the Big 12. So OU and Texas want to go as soon as they can, which means 2022. The Big 12 wants to keep them as long as they can to keep that money flowing for the reasons we've talked about. So it's going to come to loggerheads. You'll have serious negotiations. You'll have arguments. You'll have threats. You might have a lawsuit. There's no telling how it plays out, but the Big 12 has no incentive to let them out of the deal early. There's no reason for the Big 12 to do that. A big enough check might change their mind, but it's also conceivable that OU and Texas play 4 seasons more in the Big 12.
Is Texas more prepared to offer a big check than OU?
Yes. Texas has more money than OU. Texas has more money than probably Fort Knox. So Texas could write a check, but Texas' reasons weren't as much financial as OU's reasons. Clearly, they both were financially motivated, but ESPN's involved, the Longhorn Network. It gets very complicated. I don't know where we'll go, but I don't think this will be an easy transition. Since we've had the last 30 years of conference realignment, every 5, 6, 7, 8 years we have some movement, and the most any school has played as a lame duck is 2 football seasons. Most have played just 1, but it's possible this is the kind of place where we could see a more elongated departure.
If, assuming Oklahoma and Oklahoma State move into different conferences, do you think they'll still play each other?
I think they will for two reasons. One, OU is on record as saying we want to. So if all of a sudden OU backs off of that, they'll look pretty disingenuous. And coming from a place where, public relations has not been one of the great things for OU in this whole mess. I mean, they've sort of come out looking like they, walked out on their brothers in arms, saying we want to continue Bedlam is sort of an olive branch. To pull that olive branch would not be a good look. OSU, a lot of Cowboys are saying, hey, forget them. We don't need them. Don't mess with them anymore. Quit playing them. That would be a bad decision. You can't make decisions based on emotion. Don't make financial decisions based on emotion. That's how people get in the poorhouse. And OSU needs all the economic advantages it can find. And if you continue playing Bedlam, that means OSU, whether it's in the Big 12, whether it's as a petition to the Pac-12, doesn't matter the conference. If OSU has a Bedlam game every other season in Stillwater, that's a big-time chip you can play in contract negotiations with television networks. I think OSU should also increase its non-conference scheduling. If you lose OU in Texas, your conference schedule by decree is going to be slightly less, or maybe more than slightly less imposing. Increase the attractiveness of your non-conference schedule, and you've got a better chance at recouping some of that television money.
We could talk about this all day.
You can talk all. We could not exhaust the subject.
Let's switch to the Thunder. Are you excited about the upcoming season?
No, I'm not excited about the upcoming season. We saw the Thunder in full tank mode there in the last half of the season after Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was injured. They're basically in full tank mode all season this year. The roster's been cut down even more. They've gone more to youth. Al Horford is not here. The Thunder was pretty competitive with Horford and SGA. I think when they shut down SGA and Horford, Oklahoma City was 19-24. It's not a great record, but that's a competitive basketball team. But without Horford, without some other pieces like that, it's going to be SGA and a bunch of young guys. The Thunder will be playing for lottery balls again. We suffered through it the second half of that season. It's going to be a long, cold winter on the basketball court. We're going to have to sort of adjust our mindset. We haven't had to do that much, in the Thunder's history, but it's going to take an adjustment for fans and media, and frankly, probably the front office and players and everybody else. Not really focusing on winning basketball games is counter to everything that we all love about sports, but that's just sort of the business of the NBA these days.
About 30 seconds left. Will they build this team around SGA, or will they have to move him too because they're going to miss his window? Now they've signed him. They've signed him up, but will they keep him?
If they will keep him, they've got him for 5 more years. You don't have to make this decision for a long time. With just a little bit of lottery luck, you don't have to worry about it. If they have more bad luck in the lottery, which they did this year, maybe that becomes an issue.
All right. Barry, thanks for coming back.
You bet. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Barry.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we return.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, Each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Boy, Barry Tramel's a good guest.
Oh, he's just terrific. That's why he's been on so many times, and he's so nice to be available because he chose to travel here to the studio to do the show, and I'm sure he had other things to do, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, and this is a topic that no matter what your favorite team is in the state, this is very important to you. I mean, this is like, you may not agree with somebody else, but I mean, this is a major significance to almost everyone in the state.
It is, and even if you aren't a rabid sports fan, the intrigue of it all is fascinating.
That's right. All right, well, we got some website information to give you. Barry is a columnist at the Oklahoman. The website of the Oklahoman is oklahoman.com. And then we have a website. It's theverdict.tv, where you can log on and tell us about a guest you'd like to see appear on the show, or a topic you'd like to see us cover. We really appreciate Barry Tramel coming back on the show and providing us information on OU and Texas's decision to part the Big 12 and some other topics. We hope you'll join us next week. We'll have an equally exciting show, and we'll see you then.